So we're going to be adding pagination to our search, and this has two parts to it. The first is figuring out when to actually go to the next page or fetch more data, and the second is to actually create a function that will get more data or merge it into our current list of items so we can have more data there. So we're going to start with that second part, creating a function that we can call that will get us more data. So I'm here in the controller in our search listing component, and we're going to pass a new function to the children that the child can use. So this new function is going to be called load more, and what this is going to take is no parameters and it returns void, and the purpose of it is to just add more data. So we know when the user calls this that they want more data, so we're just going to do that right here. And the way we fetch more data with Apollo is by this is a property that they give us called fetch more that we can use, and so we can call that in our load more here. And we're going to put all our logic of fetch more right here, and what we do is we first pass in the new variables, and the variables are going to stay the same as they were up here, so we can do ... variables. The only difference is now our offset has changed. So let's say we are loading 5 items at a time, so our offset would be 0, and then after we load more we want our offset to be 5, or the number of listings. So what we can do is we can say the offset is equal to listings.length, and that's how many items we are in the list. So that's all we have to use to decide what the offset is already the amount of listings that we've fetched. And then the second part of this is the update query. So this takes 2 parameters, the previous query data, and the second is a object, and the object has a key of fetch more result. So this is the result from the query. Now sometimes it's undefined, so you have to do an if statement to check. So we're going to see if we get any data back. If we don't get data back, we just want to return the previous result. So I'm going to say return previous. And what return previous, what this previous is, and if we just do previous dot, you can kind of see the property on it. So it has the search listings, and this is pretty much the previous data that we've already loaded. So we're going to have 2 things that we need to merge together: the data we currently have and the data that we just fetched. So we're going to say return, and we're going to keep all the previous values, and we're just going to update the search listings, and we're going to say previous.search listings, and we're going to keep all those values, and I wanted to do ... there we go, and then we're going to add on fetch more result, and we're going to do .search listings and do ... there. So now we're just adding on to the end of the search listings, and I'm not sure. Okay, I was wondering why we were getting this error. It's because I didn't mean to add it to the props, but I wanted to add load more to the search listings. So this is not a prop that we're passing in to the search listing, but it is a child that we pass down. So we put it in this with search listings interface. All right, so now the error is gone. So again, just to recap what this fetch more is doing, we specified what data it's going to fetch by passing in the variables. So we're going to fetch the exact same search query that we had, except now we are increasing the offset so we get more items. And then when that search is complete, this update query is going to be called, and we're going to check if we got more results. If we don't, we just get return the previous results that we have before we even fetch data. And then here we're keeping the previous results and then adding on our search listings that we got. So I'm saying keep all the previous search listings, and at the end add the search listings that we get from the fetched result. So now I'm just going to build this, and in my controller I can actually access and call this. And actually there's one other thing I want to do, and I want to know whether we have more data to be fetched. So if we just keep loading more, eventually we're going to get 0 data back, or we're going to get data that is not the full limit. So for example, let's say I set my limit to 5 and I fetch data, but there's only 2 left, we're going to get 2 back. So that's something we can check for right here, and I'm going to create a prop that we pass down, or a variable. So I'm going to call this has more listings, and this is going to be a boolean. And the way we're going to know whether we have more listings, I'm going to say const has more listings, is two ways. So we're going to say listings.length mod, and we're going to do variables.limit. So what this is about is, let's say our limit is 5. If we get 2 items back, we want to make sure that 2 mod 5 is equal to 2, and that's not equal to 0. So we're going to say is equal to 0. So we know, for example, if we get 2 items back, that we do not have more listings because we should have gotten 5 back. So if we get 5 items back, we mod it by the limit of 5. We now have 0. And this works each time. So at each time we should get 5 more items. So we should get 5 items, then we should get 10 items, then 15, then 20. And if we ever don't get that many items, the mod of it should be not equal to 0. And it'll tell us we do not have more listings. And I'm going to make this a let, because there's one other condition. Sometimes you might fetch more data and it is 0. So if the listings.length is equal to the offset, variables.offset, and really we can say greater than or equal to. So if the offset is greater than or equal to the listing length, then has more listings is false. So if we get to the point where we say we have 5 items, and so our first fetch, the offset will be 0, and the listings length will be 5. And let's say we fetch more items. We change the offset now to be equal to 5, because that's our listing length. And let's spell that correctly. And then we get 0 items back. So then our offset is 5 and our listing length is 5. So we know we're done fetching because we got 0 items back. So this is one way you can check whether we have more items back on the front end. We could also do this check on the back end if we wanted to as well. All right, so let's rebuild this, and now we can use these things that we created in our connector. So now we have that data, and let's see where we call this right here. So I can get the load more is, I guess, what we'll start with. So now in my footer, and let's refresh this. In my footer, what I want to do is I want to display a loading indicator. So actually, let's not even stop with that. So I'm going to do 2 ways that I like to do with pagination. We're going to start with infinite scrolling, and I'll show you another way I slightly prefer, but it's not as advanced. So we're going to use an activity indicator. Now what an activity indicator does is it just adds this little spinner at the bottom, and I think you can specify the size. Yep, so if we want it bigger, we could do that. Oh, it should be only 1. Oh, I didn't know it was supposed to be 1 or 0. I guess it's the width that I can change if I want it bigger. So width 20, height 20. Nope, that doesn't work. I'm actually not sure how to increase the activity indicator size. I'll have to look that up after this. So that's what we're going to have at the bottom, so you know when you reach the bottom that you can, that we're loading more items. And now we only want to add that if we have more items. So has more listings. So we're going to say has more listings. If we do that, if we have more listings, we're gonna render the activity indicator. Otherwise, we're gonna return null. Looks like it doesn't like us returning null from this, so I can just render an empty view instead. So in this case, we don't have any more items to fetch, so it's rendering just the empty view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove passing the guests and the beds in, because that's limiting it a little bit too much. So now in our query, we're only looking for a name that's blank, which should give us all our items. So if I scroll to the bottom, I can see there's a little loading indicator there. And if we wanted to, we could go ahead and add a style. If we wanted to, for example, add some margin on the bottom to push it up, we could do that. Or some margin to the top to push it up, we could as well. And also, we can add this to our flat list. So the flat list itself looks like it's kind of hitting or conflicting with the bottom of the iPhone. So I'm just gonna add some margin to the bottom, maybe 10, and we can say margin top I think is better here. So now it's a little bit above it. We can even do more if we wanted to. And now you can see also the loading indicator isn't just straight running into the card above. Okay, so loading indicator is fine. We can add more styles if we wanted to. But this loading indicator, we want to just show them that, hey, we're loading more items. But we're actually not loading more items right now. To load more items, there's a handy function called, I think it's called reach, on and reach, there we go. And this is called whenever we reach the bottom of the list. So we can say bottom of list, and we can see this in our console whenever we reach the bottom. So here's my console, and did it say bottom of the list already? So let's do that again. Yep, and it's showing me the bottom of the list. Even if I scroll, I'm not sure why it's showing me, they're telling me that we've reached the bottom already. In that case, there's a threshold, and we can just increase the threshold. I'm going to set the threshold to, I don't know, 20. So now it's still there. It's set to 200. It's still calling the on threshold, and I'm not sure what I have wrong. I don't think you do a negative number. Don't think that helps. Oh, looks like that might help actually. And let's see. Nope. Let's make it like negative 50. Nope, that doesn't work either. I guess negative threshold totally breaks it. Let's see if I just do like 10 or something. Nope, didn't work. I'm not sure why the threshold is messed up. I was thinking a default threshold should just work with this. But we're reaching the bottom already. I'm wondering if this margin bottom we added causes it. I don't think so. Oh, wow. Actually, that was causing the problem. So, alright, don't add margin bottom to the flat list because that seems to be breaking it. So let's refresh. No, that didn't work either. Alright, I'm not sure what's going on with the on and reached. This is something that I could probably play around with and get working, but this is something I've had problems with before, and that's why I actually don't like this as much. But what we would do is when the end is reached, we would load more items. So we can keep it like this, and we can see if we can still get this to work. So I'm going to get the load more function here. Load more. And I'm just going to call the load more whenever we reach the bottom. So now I'm going to say fetching more data. And we'll see if this just, okay, so it only calls it once. And now if I reach the bottom, okay. So it looks like it's actually working correctly. And the idea with this is we just have an infinite list now. See how we just scroll and we just fetch more data? So that's the idea with that. So it looks like it was being a little sensitive at the top because it kept fetching more data. I can probably play around with the threshold to get that the way I want it, but I'm not exactly sure what number it should be. But we got it scrolling, so now we can infinitely scroll and we get all the items that we're searching for. And we can change our search. So I'm going to do all the ones that have an O, and now we can restart the pagination and keep scrolling. Alright, so that's how you do infinite scrolling if you want to do that. The other method I would prefer using, just because it prevents kind of problems with the on and reach and just avoids a lot of headache, is to just manually load more. So I can just get rid of this. And by the way, you can keep this method if you like this method. It seems to be working pretty well. And we didn't even see the loading indicator at the bottom. It was loading before we even got there. But what we can do is at the bottom here, just render a button. So let's do button. And I can now, if we have more items, instead of a loading indicator, display a button. And I'm going to title it load more. And then on click or on press, we're just going to load more. So now I can scroll to the bottom and I can press my button and it'll load more items. And now I don't think the margin that I added at the bottom was actually causing a problem. Let's do like 25. And now I can just press this to load more items. And so this is a method where you don't have to worry about any kind of weird scrolling. and keeping track of when you hit the end, and you can just have the user click load more if they'd like to see more. And this also kind of avoids unnecessary renders if the user didn't really want to load more items. But of course, this is slower for the user. With the other one you just saw, I could just scroll and we get more and more items. With this one, I have to go ahead and click to get more. But either way, that is how you can do pagination with Apollo and the flat list. And that's why we wanted to do the flat list, because it has all these nice methods that we can use that makes it really easy. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.